I was pleased with my main tweets video I posted recently, but it completely failed. I thought, obviously incorrectly, that starting World War III might be important. In our own historic time, the declaration of war for the final battle will be issued over X. I really enjoyed my Minthara quotes in that video too. It is even worse than I thought. We need to watch a clip from Judge Napolitano and University of Chicago professor John Mearsheimer.
General Christopher Donahue commands more troops than any other American general, all American troops in Europe and in Africa, threatened to put American ground troops on the ground in Russia. But I want you to hear this first. It's relatively brief. It's only about 20 seconds. Chris, cut number 16.
If you look at Kaliningrad, at its, you can argue back and forth, but it's about 47 miles wide, surrounded by NATO on all sides. There's absolutely no reason why that A2AD bubble, to deter Russia, we cannot take that down from the ground in a time frame that is unheard of and faster than we've ever been able to do. We've already planned that, we've already developed it.
On the ground, planned it, and developed it. Professor Mearsheimer, could such a statement have been made by a four-star general without approval of the Secretary of Defense and the President of the United States?
It's hard to believe that he didn't get approval to say that. It's a remarkably provocative and foolish statement. And I find it hard to imagine that a general would make a statement of that sort without getting it cleared by at least the Pentagon. And I would imagine even the President of the United States.
I mean, could you imagine if a Russian general said, we could take the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska in remarkable speed. We've trained it for it. We're prepared to do it. It would be the moral equivalent of that. And you can imagine how President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, Senator Graham, and that crowd, and then the American public would react to that.
But very importantly, it's not the strategic equivalent. That's the key point. When you talk about the Aleutian Islands, you're not talking about taking American real estate in the context of a war. There's no war over Alaska or Canada or anything like that. We're talking about taking Kaliningrad in the context of an almost war between the United States and Russia. I wouldn't even call it a proxy war. I call it an almost war because it's so close to being a war.
Right.
We've been very close to being fully at war with the Russians for over 3 years now, right? This is serious business. And we've made it clear to the Russians that we're bent on knocking them out of the ranks of the great powers. We want to defeat the Russians. So it's in that context that you have General Donahue talking about American or NATO troops taking Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad is Russian territory. That's another way of saying it's sacred territory.
Yes.
The idea that NATO would even threaten to initiate a campaign that involves invading and conquering Kaliningrad is almost unthinkable to me.
Is the American foreign policy both reckless and depraved?
Yes. I mean, certainly reckless. I mean, this is, in my opinion, a reckless statement. Look, if you're the Russians, right, and you know that Kaliningrad is exposed, the general's correct that it's exposed Russian territory because it's detached from Mother Russia and it's surrounded by a handful of NATO states. And he's saying that we can take it very easily, and he's intimating that we may take it very easily. Very important to understand that. He's basically sending a signal, or trying to send a signal to the Russians. We may take Kaliningrad. This means that in a crisis, the Russians have a powerful incentive to preempt, to prevent that from happening. If you get into a crisis with the Russians, you do not want them to have an incentive to preempt. And this is what that does. We would have never done anything like this in the Cold War. Now, you can say Russia's not the Soviet Union. The problem with that argument is that Russia has thousands of nuclear weapons.
A quick tutorial. Kaliningrad became part of Russia after World War II. It is the westernmost part of Russia, on the Baltic Sea, and home to the Russian Baltic Fleet. In other words, a territory of enormous strategic importance to Russia. So the two largest nuclear powers square off on social media with a recklessness we all enjoy, because deep down we crave apocalypse, being so steeped in our own decadence. I see no evidence our moral regeneration will come from the three monotheistic Iron Age religions. It's a good time to quote Karl Marx before launching into the original, abridged, Mean Tweets video. History repeats itself, first as tragedy, second as farce.
Oppression, conspiracies. This city has its charms after all.
The fascist ICE raids woke me up from a 20-year apolitical slumber. But I can't unsee the horror show in global politics right now. Everything Donald Trump has done with Iran since his first term has been mind-boggling stupid, starting with tearing up the JCPOA. Iran became the adult in a room with Netanyahu and Trump in it, providing an off-ramp for the world to steer away from World War III. But the commander-in-chief veers back on the highway to hell at the next available exit, because of a mean tweet he does not actually understand. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, in a Telegram post, wrote something about The Walking Dead and the dead hand directly to President Trump. It was lame and not entirely clear. Kleptocrat Putin's bulldog was all bluster. I doubt Pete Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard rushed to explain to the president that the dead hand is not from Game of Thrones. The dead hand is a gift from the Cold War, the automatic nuclear revenge switch if Russian leadership gets vaporized. So, President Trump announces on Truth Social the deployment of 2 Ohio-class submarines to the appropriate regions in case the mean tweets get real. The exact type of provocation that could trigger the dead hand. The SecDef, in a brave act of sycophancy, retweeted the president.
If you cannot see the appeal of bloodshed and danger, perhaps you should retire from adventuring and farm root vegetables for the rest of your days.
Struggle, but hopefully still at peace. Team Average.
Spill its blood and bathe in Baal's eternal rapture.
Civilian, do not listen to this ancient